Hello, thank you for our first book club of 2022 from the Bayview Historical Society. I am Joel, and I'm accompanied by James Heinz. He is with the Wisconsin Maritime Historical Society, and they're the people that put out this wonderful, fun book about maritime Milwaukee history. It's from the Images of America. We're going to go through just kind of some of the pictures and stories and things like that contained in. But James, I know we were talking a little bit about the introduction part of it. So maybe you want to catch up on how this was kind of made. Who's to thank for all of this wonderful things?
Oh, okay. Well, the man who wrote it or compiled it is a man named Chuck Sterba. Chuck was a member of the Wisconsin Marine Historical Society, a very active member. He's still alive, but he lived in Illinois and he dropped out because he didn't like to drive up to Milwaukee. So, he did a good job. We have an extensive catalog of photographs and information about Great Lakes shipping. And so this shows the evolution of Milwaukee's harbor and waterways through photographs primarily.
Wonderful, wonderful. And this was compiled maybe about a decade ago. Is that about right?
Let's see. This is just a moment. I didn't actually look at that. It's copyright 2011. By Arcadia Publishing of Charleston, South Carolina.
All right. So roughly a decade ago. And today we were just talking about that. It's kind of appropriate that we're doing maritime history. It's the 110th anniversary of the Titanic being struck by the iceberg out there in the Atlantic. And the Wisconsin Maritime Historical Society is also having a fun little bit of information about that, a little write-up on your blog, right?
Yes, it will be appearing in a few days, but basically it's the story of a Milwaukee ship owner who was aboard the Titanic trying to conceal a sex scandal. However, it is said of him that he didn't like to buy lifeboats for his Great Lakes ships, and instead he died on the Titanic because he couldn't find a lifeboat. And not only that, but after death, he and his family would go on another journey together that I document in this series.
Really?
So
okay,
I don't want to give away too much.
Sure.
It's definitely something to look
forward to. Interesting that it's a ship owner here in Milwaukee with that. That does not appear in this book here
no
at all. But
well, some of his ships might be, but I don't think so. It's kind of hard to say. He ran mostly cross lake steamers in Lake Michigan.
Very good.
And from Milwaukee to Grand Haven, and then from Milwaukee to Chicago.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, if you're tuning in to view this, we're not going to be showing too much of the pictures. I mean, maybe I can hold something up, but we're going to assume that you have the book with you. We'll announce the pages as we go through. If you have comments or questions or anything like that, please just post them and we'll read them as we can. It's the first book talk for either James or myself. We probably read a lot of books. We just don't really talk about them online with people. So we're going to get started right away at the beginning. There's that wonderful, some early maps here of Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, on page 10, there's a couple of maps of Milwaukee showing that the harbor and the river mouths look completely different than they are today. If you look at the one on the top of page 10, it shows the Milwaukee River coming down from the north, joining the Menominee, and then flowing south, parallel to the one on the viewer's left, flowing south, separated by a sandbar from Lake Michigan, and that's the way Chicago's harbor was as well. When the river hits the lake, the sediment, the current stops and the sediment drops out and starts building up the sandbar.
Yeah, builds up the sandbar
until eventually it finds a spot where it can work its way out. And in fact, the sandbar that you see that separates the river from Lake Michigan was built by the river itself, and it just keeps moving south, looking for a place to get out to the lake. And it also shows the three towns What is now the east side of downtown was known as Juneau Town. The west side of downtown was known as Kilbourne Town. These two communities feuded with each other largely over the political maneuvering of Byron Kilbourne. The two communities did not align their street plans. That's why some of our bridges downtown crossed the river, at an angle. And we had the famous Milwaukee Bridge Wars. Everybody burned down
That does
everybody
get
else's.
noticed by a lot of visitors to Milwaukee. Yeah.
Everybody notices that that our bridges are, some of them, the Juneau and the Water Street bridges are at an angle. What happened was,
we lost you for a little bit. Yeah, they they even pulled out a cannon and started to aim it at each other and tear down bridges. But at least it ended for the good. They just merged together their forces underneath the city of Milwaukee instead. So James seems to be having a little bit of trouble with his video from time to time. There we go. Are you back with us, James? I know the next one, that's kind of towards the bottom here then. Still shows, that little bit. There's no straight cut yet. There's no formation of the Jones Island. So you're still kind of stuck with us a little bit, James. The next page after that is, one of those great images of the harbor, 1870, with the piers are now showing. The straight cut has now been made. This allowed the harbor to be widened and deepened and a little bit better. We'll have to see if James is restarting his computer or anything like that to get on back with us. It's kind of like I think the image that I have as my background here is one of those type of ones that's a little overlay. There, you're back with us, James.
Yeah, the top of page 11. I believe that's your background photograph, isn't it? Or am I wrong? Yeah.
It is, yeah. Yeah, or similar, very similar. I think it's part of a very large type of one.
Yes. Yeah, it is. Well, this, of course, that picture is in 1870, and then they had made what they call the straight cut through the sandbar, and then built two, breakwaters out into a lake to make it easier for ships to get into the river mouth. It's a little known fact that for many years, Milwaukee was actually a bigger port and a bigger city than Chicago. The reason is because we have Milwaukee Bay. Ships trying to get into the harbor mouth could come into the bay,
kind of cuts in,
sheltered from the storm. Chicago doesn't have a bay, and trying to line up your ship to get it through the narrow harbor mouth, especially an old sailing ship, you frequently failed. But then the railroads came to Chicago, and once that happened, then they pulled ahead of us in terms of size and population.
Yeah, for some reason, we've never built a railroad bridge all the way across the lake. I don't know what's the big deal about not building that, but yeah, they're kind of ideally placed there at the bottom of Lake Michigan. So yeah, there's a couple more pictures of the harbor. I like you said, the sailing ships. So about how long were those in Milwaukee? Any idea before steam started to make, or was it the same time?
Well, it started out all sail. The steamboat hadn't been invented.
Okay.
And then steamboats are expensive and unreliable. And for shipping bulk cargo, sailing ships have a couple of advantages. They don't require an engine. The entire hull is available as cargo space, and the fuel is free. So as steam power improved in reliability and efficiency slowly over time, the steamship would replace the sailing ship. But I believe there were sailing ships on the lake still as late as the 1930s.
Wow.
In the ocean, the last sailing ship in commercial cargo carrying service went out of administration during the Kennedy administration. Went out of service, during the Kennedy administration.
Okay.
So they do have certain advantages to that. But as time goes on, the advantages of steam power becomes better and better, and sailing ships are more dangerous. You don't have an engine, so you can be becalmed or caught in storms or things like that. And it requires a higher degree of seamanship to handle them than a motor vessel or a steamship.
A little bit more training and
a lot more experience. The sails themselves are actually a danger to the ship. If you get caught in a sudden squall, what they call a microburst or a white squall, the winds can actually just push the ship over, roll it over on its side, and sink it if you can't get the canvas off her fast enough.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah. So there's a couple of pages. I don't think we need to go through every single photo here.
No, there are hundreds of them.
Yeah, of some of those great images of the sailing boats on there.
Well, if we go to page 14, at the top and bottom, we can see that Jones Island was a lot different in those days. Yeah, and what you see on the far side of the picture, those people are actually squatters. They don't actually belong there. They are fishermen from the Baltic, and they were called Kashubs, and they just squatted on vacant land at that time. Eventually, they would be displaced by the Jones Island sewage treatment plant, which, of course, is our local monument to socialism, because the socialist mayors built that. Because in the old days, we just dumped the sewage in the lake and then we pumped it back in as drinking water. My grandfather told me this. He was an immigrant. He came to Milwaukee in 1911. And he said the rich people lived west of downtown, their property, so they didn't want to pay for clean drinking water for everybody else. But the socialist mayors built that. And of course, as we know, they also recycled it into fertilizer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The Milorganite.
Yeah, well, in the old days, they used to actually get around downtown and to Jones Island and down to Walker's Point by boat from downtown. And guys would go down to the Kashub village to get fresh fish, because it was literally fresh. It had been pulled out of that lake just a few hours earlier.
Wonderful.
And at night, there were no lights down there, and the buildings were laid out in no particular order. And young boys would appear, and they would offer to guide you to some place that was serving, fresh fish and beer and Kashub girls. And when you got done with your business, it was dark. You couldn't find your way back to where the boat landing was. And these same boys would reappear and offer to guide you, only now it cost $1.
Oh, it's like you could escape.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
So.
But that was that Jones Island was made from that sandbar then. Basically, that
basically. I mean, in this picture at the top, the waterway that seems to go to the left of the picture, that's probably the remainder of the straight cut.
Yes.
Yeah, originally Jones Island, the outlet to the lake was much further south, down by Bayview, because when you get down there, you've got those bluffs or cliffs, and that probably is what stopped the river and dug its way through. But when you dug this straight cut out, then you stopped getting the silt down there. They must have filled in the swamp that existed between the southern end of the island and the mainland. And then the Illinois Steel Company, right about now where the south end of the Hoen Bridge is, or where the Coast Guard station is, they built a great big steel mill there.
Oh.
Technically, I guess they own the whole island. Right? And the Kashubs, if we look further on, they will show it in some of the pictures further in the book. But the Kashubs were basically squatting on steel company land. But since the steel company apparently wasn't actually using it, they apparently left them alone.
For a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I believe they left them alone until the whatchamacallit, the filtration plant was built. And some of them clung on down there even up until World War II, when the government decided to develop the port greater, and then they all had to leave.
Got evicted. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're living on this low-lying sandbar that is prone to flooding. So some of them actually built their houses on like boats. So when the island flooded, the house just rose. They lived in a houseboat that was on dry land most of the time, except when the island flooded, and then the houseboat floated.
Very interesting. Yeah. Yeah. A neat aspect of Milwaukee history at some time. So this looks like the next series of pictures are with some of the boat launching being done. Seems like it'd be a great spot then, right? If you got,
I'm sorry, what?
the low lying areas, you got a few boat launches here on like page 16, even 14 had one at the bottom there.
Experience. I was once out at a Forest Home Cemetery where the Protestant elite were buried, and there's actually Wolf and Davidson actually have the same burial plot, and it's marked with a big stone with a stone model of a Great Lakes bulk carrier on top of this gravestone. And so apparently the two families must have been pretty close.
That is the launching there of the
time. We built ships in Oak Creek. They cut down the oak trees for which the creek is named and built sailing ships, and down there. So if you look at the top of page, I look at the bottom of page 18. In the background, at the top of the picture, you can see the Illinois Steel Company dock.
Oh, very good.
Illinois Steel Company. You can see at the bottom of page 19, you can see they built the Kashubas built themselves some sort of a flat bottom boat. And that's probably kind of the top of.
Yeah.
So
that looks very much like one that they might have in the Florida Everglades or something.
Yeah. So we go to the next page 20. Then there's pictures of the of them drying their nets. The nets were made out of twine, I believe, so you had to dry them off from time to time.
Otherwise, they're kind of rot, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and if we go forward and we're on page 23, at the top there's a picturing settlement. I believe the straw must be the film. So,
yeah, kind of looking towards the lake there.
Look at the bottom of page 24. You have, and then a picture of the Illinois steel mill, and they're clearing off the Kashubs and their fishing village. So, at the top of page 25, there's a picture showing, like the seawall that they built, and then to the right, I guess, of the picture, they would then pour fill in there to create, a firm surface for Jones Island.
Sure. So that it wouldn't flood anymore on us.
Pardon?
So it wouldn't flood anymore on us or anything.
That's right. Oh, here's an interesting one. Look at page 26 at the top. As you can see, this ship, there's a Viking longship entering the Port of Milwaukee. It's built for the World's Columbian Exposition, and that ship that you see in that picture still exists. It was
they brought it over from the Atlantic.
Yes,
they sailed it across the Atlantic, all the way down there.
Yes, and that ship still exists. It's on display in suburban Chicago.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it was displayed on the lakefront for a while.
Yeah.
In Chicago, it fell into bad shape, and then a group of Viking heritage people moved it out to suburban Chicago. If you suburban Chicago into your browser, it is open for tours, I believe, in the summer.
Quite fun. Yeah. Yeah, that's also, I don't know if we're going to come across that, but the SS Columbus, the whaleback vessel, served as well for the passengers going to the World's Fair. And then for many decades, it went between Milwaukee and Chicago for tourism.
Yes.
Kind of dance on board and things like that. I've come across a great YouTube.
Yes, and one of the Wisconsin Marine Historical Society named Todd Gordon will be giving a speech on the Christopher Columbus at the North Point Library, North Point Lighthouse, in September, I believe.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I think they have models all around, Milwaukee or at different places. I've seen ones at either the library or lighthouses, like you said, yeah, with that whaleback kind of thing. Just something that wasn't made that often. Just like, no Viking ships probably would have made its way to Lake Michigan during that time. So now we've got another chapter here, kind of the inner harbor.
Yes. Well, the inner harbor, of course, sort of always existed. And if we look at the pictures on page 28, especially the bottom one, you can see looking all the way down at the south end of Jones Island, that's where originally the river came out, and then they made the north cut. So you can see how the island, Jones Island, was converted to a peninsula.
Yeah. Kind of loop around there, sure.
And it's still there. If you look at the picture on the top, page 28, in the bottom of the picture in the center, there's some round steel tanks. Those are the asphalt plant that still exists. And then to the right of that, you see there's a building, and that's the Great Lakes Water Institute for the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Very, very important institute. I mean, the Great Lakes are one of the largest sources of fresh water in the world.
Yeah.
Definitely here in North America for us. So a resource, to keep and protect, keep clean. That's always been a problem, like you mentioned earlier, between the places. So the Illinois Steel Company is still kind of working there, doing a few things on page 30.
Yeah. You want to see a really good picture, go to the bottom of page 33. And you can see in the 1930s how narrow Jones Island actually is at that time, especially at the south end. Yeah. The steel mill is in the center of the picture, lower center of the picture. And you can see that actually the island is pretty thin up there. It's much fatter nowadays. They must have filled in quite a bit.
I think that was some of that. They've done it across many of our beaches, kind of the big slabs of concrete and things that they've taken from other buildings or other locations, kind of dump that in there, protect our beachfront so it doesn't keep washing away and changing on us.
Yeah, no, that's true. So let's see.
So then we've got some really, really large vessels. Are those all with the steel companies again?
I'm sorry you cut out there.
We've got some very large vessels then. Are those all kind of with the steel company?
I would guess so. Those are classic Great Lakes bulk carriers, and I believe they're carrying, although it's hard to say, it depends. It says May 1st, 1923. So it's not in for winter layup anymore. Those type of ships carried all kinds of things. They carried grain up the Milwaukee River to the breweries, and maybe I will carry.
Yeah, here at the bottom one, it says it's going to the Sylva Coke Company and United Coal and Dock Company facilities.
Power.
The coke was used, for the power plants for Milwaukee. Little bit of a pollution on that. We had talked about that earlier when we were discussing the book.
Yes.
The pulverized coal.
Yes, they would
that.
crush the coal, and that made it combust, I think, more efficiently.
Yeah, we were actually the first place in the world to do that at the
coal dust
at the plant there along the Milwaukee River. Roughly where the theater group is today, right on Wisconsin.
There is a whaleback in that picture. We're talking about the Christopher. There's a whale.
Really? we lose you a little bit again? Dredging. Dredging, of course, an important part of of any harbor or port. Keep it busy, excavating and drilling driving the pilings to create the steel bulkhead to improve the shore facilities. Yeah, there's that whaleback freighter you had mentioned. Totally lost James for a bit, but we'll continue on. Municipal mooring basin. So the dredging spoils are kind of being, this is how they would have built up some of that land area with Jones Harbor then. Pump it out there to the outer harbor as the landfill, naturally protecting the erosion. The lake is a little high at the moment, but it does fluctuate going up and down. So it's always very important to keep a clear channel for all the features there. The car ferry slip on Jones Island. Here, James is back. Let's add him on back.
What page is that?
The car ferry slip is on page 44.
Okay. I was trying to say, and we kept cut off, is that there is a whaleback steamer in the picture on page 41. I don't know if you heard me.
Yeah, the court there.
Yeah.
I found it eventually.
Yeah, there's the municipal car ferry. Those car ferries would back in and load from the stern. Good picture there on page 45.
Yeah. You ever taken a car ferry across?
I took the Badger across the lake maybe 25 years ago, but I never took anything out of Milwaukee Harbor when I was a kid.
That's further north.
Yeah.
Yeah, not too much a call for it today.
Yeah.
On the top of page 46, you've got the Grand Trunk Railroad car ferries.
Yes.
So I had read about that. So they wanted to kind of continue. The Grand Trunk Railroad was going through Canada. And this was then kind of to continue on that.
Well, the same thing today. We've got the Canadian Pacific, I think, and there's the Canadian National runs through Milwaukee.
Right.
The darn Canadians are infiltrating us.
Well, you had mentioned about the water. I mean, we have a pact between the Canadian provinces and the American states on properly doing that. No armed vessels allowed on the Great Lakes. I think we've had a few disputes in the past history about that kind of thing. War of 1812 and all.
Yeah, not much trouble with the Canadians since 1814.
Here we got some of those classic heavy lift cranes there on top of page 49.
Okay, which page are you on?
The top of 49.
Okay.
So we still got the U.S. steel vessels laid up in the Port of Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. You had mentioned that with some of those large boats that they're kind of winter over here in Milwaukee. Would they just kind of come all the way into the inner harbor then and be up the kind of in our river or down in the area where Potawatomi is today, down in the valley? Is that what they were kind of do, or?
I'm sorry, your question cut out.
Would those ships just kind of winter over further inside the Milwaukee River then?
No, I think most of those larger ships would just stay in the mooring, in the mooring basin, the turning basin, or whatever it's called, the inner harbor.
Okay.
The picture at the bottom of page 50 shows how they're all packed in as the.
Oh wow! Yeah.
As the
look at that wonderful one.
As the caption says, like sardines.
Yeah.
So, And if you look at the
We're
bottom
literally
of page,
touching each other.
yeah, right. Yeah, look at the top of page 51. They're literally touching each other.
Yeah.
So if you look at the picture at the bottom of page 51, those freighters, I believe, were built in Milwaukee at a shipyard run by
For
the Fleming
the
brothers.
Marine fleet.
Yes. It was built by the Fleming brothers.
Oh, Fleming brothers.
Were
Fleming
concrete
brothers.
contractors, a contract. There's an interesting two set of pictures on page 52.
Yeah.
This is one of the two aircraft carriers that the government operated out of Chicago to train Navy pilots during World War II. The first President Bush got his carrier qualification on one of these carriers. And the bottom of Lake Michigan off Waukegan has many aircraft wrecks, World War II Navy combat aircraft wrecks that, undershot the landing and crashed into the lake.
Sure. Wow. Wow. Any salvage operations of any of those planes that you know of?
Again, you cut out.
Were any of those planes ever salvaged? Kind of for history?
Yeah, some of them have been salvaged. There's a man who works for a company called A&T Recovery. His name is Terrace. I can't think of his last name. And he has a contract with the Navy for every 3 that he salvages, he gets to keep 1 and sell it. There's one on display at O'Hare Field in honor of the naval aviator for whom O'Hare is named. And then there is another one on display at Midway Airport. Midway is named for the Battle of Midway in 1942.
Yes.
I actually met a man at the Experimental Aircraft Association convention in Oshkosh a few years ago. He had purchased and restored one of these aircraft. He said when they brought it up, there was still air in the tires and the light bulb still worked. But he said there's this fishy smell we just can't get rid of.
Imagine that. Wow. Light bulb's still working.
However, these wrecks are deteriorating faster because of the quagga mussels and the zebra mussels.
Oh, yeah, attaching to them. So here on the top of 54, it's kind of a neat one. We've got the Nash automobiles.
Yes.
For export to Europe. So Nash out of Kenosha, the Nash Motors.
Yes. Yeah. It later became American Motors.
Yep. My grandpa worked for both of those.
Oh, okay.
Making the cars.
Yeah, we're into the 50s. That was a heyday of what the St. Lawrence Seaway was supposed to do for us to enable us to export manufactured goods.
Yeah. Again, one of the socialist kind of project to really do that with Daniel Hoen, very much so Mayor Milwaukee trumpeting and wanting that for us.
Yes.
And then some more construction being done. The Caterpillar items being built there, the tractors.
Yes.
We just used to build so many things in Milwaukee. They'd ship them out by rail or here by ship. Now, this is one that we might see a little bit of it still again, the bottom of 56. We started to talk about those big old piles of white goodness that we see every winter. The salt.
Yeah.
This last winter, we haven't had to worry too much about those piles getting low.
No, we had an incredibly dry winter.
Wasn't too bad at all. And now we're getting a nice amount of spring, though, so we don't have to worry too much about the rain here participation.
Well, we do have the April showers, and hopefully they will bring May flowers. So
just quite a lot of work being done along there. The heavy lift dock.
Mm-hmm.
This is almost more like a harbor you might see today in a San Francisco or New York City. just all the cranes and
Yes.
the bustle of activity.
Well, we were one of the heavy industry capitals of the world. We were America's machine shop.
Yeah, definitely
So
one that we used during World War II, and like you said, for a few years later on. Now here we're going to get into page 61 starts chapter 3, the outer harbor.
okay.
So I always like this one with our wonderful airport that we had right there along the harbor, right? Maitland
Is
Field.
that the top of 62?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, that is our airport. That was Maitland Field, named for Chester Maitland, who was an aviator who was the first person to fly from the mainland of America to Hawaii.
Wonderful.
So, which at the time in the 1920s was a major feat.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But pilots didn't like to use it because they made it with fill, and the problem with the fill is it contained all sorts of like nails and scrap iron and glass, and were constantly shredding their tires, landing and taking off on Maitland Field. So it was never very popular. A number of Great Lakes cities had these. Chicago used to have Meigs Field, and Cleveland, I think it has one that's still in operation.
I mean, the water was airport was viewed as something safer. It could be level and maybe a little softer. And I heard that we were all kind of gung ho to do that throughout the world until World War II happened. And then we built airports everywhere so we could, protect and fight and transport things.
Well, it was extremely close to downtown. I mean, you could land at Maitland Field and walk over to the Pfister.
Yeah.
Or the train station, But of course, airplanes got bigger and bigger. And it's one thing we had twin engine propeller planes, but when you start to go into 4-engine propeller planes and jets, you need a much longer runway.
And then we, like you said, other things come together right there at the bottom of page 63. Then as you see part of the terminal there for the train depot, the roundhouse. So just imagine that going on right up against the harbor as well, getting all that train activity, all the train tracks. Yeah, here it looks like they're, grading and everything for it. Okay, so we've got the sewage plant on 65, together with the incinerator for our Milwaukee garbage, I imagine, right?
Mm-hmm.
The harbor is beginning to shape up a little bit more like we know it today. Those straighter cuts and all the protected landfill type of areas.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your question.
Well, I'm looking at page 67 now.
Okay.
So they're extending some of those breakwaters.
Yes, that's quite right. Yeah.
And then the capstones on top of those.
Yeah. Are those? Is the breakwater actually hollow?
They build them kind of like caissons, and then they move them out there, kind of sink them down.
Okay.
And I believe there is some fill in there. Yeah, they're filling it with concrete.
Yeah, at the bottom, page 68 says the breakwater is filled with stone and then capped with concrete.
Capped with concrete, yep. That's a great photo. You can see how rough it is and then how nearly glassy smooth it gets.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and that's not a particularly choppy day. It's just a little bit of the wind action in there, and then just the glassiest, smooth water that you can imagine. So there we see part of that breakwater with the city of Saginaw. That's another car ferry. I imagine coming all over there from Michigan, up there by Saginaw, Michigan.
Oh, there we are. Fair. In that same picture, that harbor lighthouse, the one at the middle gap there, has now been built. In previous pictures, it was not there.
It was not there.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back on page, let's see, bottom of page 66, you've got the lighthouse keeper's quarters, which is that little building that sits kind of like an island on the right-hand side there.
And then
And
you
apparently
finally
they must
have
have had a lighthouse at the end of the. Yeah, doesn't seem to.
Now today, obviously, the lighthouses aren't that important to warn everybody in the era of GPS, but we don't get too many lighthouse keepers anymore either. It's kind of a job that got away with the buggy whip.
Yeah, that's true. Well, if we keep going forward, there's more about Maitland Field. Partly because Maitland Field wasn't paved in the old days. We get to the bottom of page 80. Maitland Field, and apparently it has been.
Yeah, it says they're clearly evident.
Oaks can.
And again, that lightkeeper's residence that we were talking about. Wow, here's a great one with all the planes on there.
Yeah.
I mean, here's a neat one of the clipper ship for the passenger terminal. Something Milwaukee's planning to get back again, right? Trying to get some
still exists
tourists there on the.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's worth, if it would be economical to put her back into service.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an old ship.
Okay, I guess that brings us to the Canals,
right.
chapter 4 on page 85.
Mm-hmm.
So here we're going to go back a little bit in time, I imagine, talking about the building and the planning for these canals. Was it the concept to well, this is in the era before the trains as well really were built. They wanted to try to build canals from Milwaukee to, well, Watertown, Rock River. Very, very expensive, I can imagine, having to dig through everything in there. It didn't really make it too far. I think one of Byron Kilbourne's concepts to build those canals. But we seem to still use them then for the railway. And for the grain elevators. Getting all the grain shipments. I know some of these were melt elevators later, elevators later on too, like for the freighter. Probably known more today for the money he left to build a hospital in his name, but very big malt baron here in the city of beer, as we are in Milwaukee. So still moving in and out all the grain exports. I believe in my research I had once read during 1920 we were number 2 in America for our grain transportation in and out of there. So a lot of the grain being made in Iowa and grown there and harvested Iowa, Nebraska, then being shipped here to Milwaukee and continue that going further abroad through our harbor.
No, I'm sure you're right about that. We were a major grain exporting place.
Quite a lot of lumber as well from our North Woods. I know in the late 1890s, Wisconsin was already concerned about us over harvesting our woods. So plans were put in there, not to save the trees or Green New Deal or anything. It was just put in there to realize that this is a valuable resource that we have for our state and to plant new trees so that we continue harvesting them. The cement carrier, isn't that neat? I'm on page 95 now.
Okay.
The cement carrier EM Ford is shown in the Menominee Harbor.
Yeah, the Ford was the site of the biggest lawsuit the city of Milwaukee ever had. She sank at the outer.
She sank at the outer harbor
docks and the outer harbor. A storm. I'm not sure, 20 or 30 years ago. She's carrying cement powder.
We lost you a little bit. I don't know this story. She sank in cement powder.
To be at fault could be. So the city had to pay out quite a bit of money.
So the city was found to be at fault?
Yes. I'm afraid I can't remember exactly the facts of the case.
Well, we'll have to look that up.
The Ford is still afloat in Greenment warehouse,
Now the page right after that, pages 96, shows some other disasters.
Oh yeah, those are the fireboats. As you
Fireboats?
know, I wrote a series of articles about that for the Marine History Society, and I believe I'll be giving a talk on that in June.
Yes, that's going to be again with the Bayview Historical Society, the Marine Historical Society, the Maritime Museum as well. So we're going to be tuning in. That'll be very interesting. Grain elevator fires, yes. And here is our Christopher Columbus after a collision. That was page 97. She had a perfect safety record until Saturday, June 30th, 1917, when she turned a junction in the Milwaukee and Menominee Rivers, and a current caused her boat to strike and topple a water tank, which crashed on top of her water house. 16 people lost their lives in that accident. He's from a slightly different angle on that. The last picture there in 96 now. That is the last one of that chapter. Mm-hmm. And the next chapter is number 5, titled The Milwaukee River. So here it'll probably be a little bit more about the Menominee River Valley, maybe some of those terminals like the Goodrich Transit Company. That's where the Christopher Columbus would dock at.
Yeah, the Goodrich family mansion still stands. Wisconsin Conservatory of Music Avenue.
That's the Wisconsin Conservatory of Music. Yeah,
Yes.
Wonderful. We never call it the Goodrich Mansion.
Nope, that's who it belonged to.
So you see a lot of the traveling up and down the river there.
Yeah, the river.
Fairly navigable, but then of course the bridges had to go up and down for that.
Yes.
I wonder if they'll show us. We also had at least one bridge that spun. Correct? It didn't raise or lower. Did we have one bridge that turned?
I'm sorry.
Did we have one?
A lot of the bridges in the old days were swivel bridges because the ships were relatively small and narrow. So they're built on a pipe. And then clear.
Trying to see if we have a swivel bridge in one of the pictures here. I just don't see one of the swivel bridges in the pictures, but we might still come across it. I'm all the way on 106 now. And we have the Conrad Starkey tugboat making its way, breaking up some ice there in the Milwaukee River. You see the Conrad again at work. I recognize that one. When I was running a museum in Milwaukee, we did get a donation of quite a lot of tugboats of the Milwaukee Harbor, and the Conrad Starkey was one that very much on there. I need to scan those in, get them over to a place I could use them better, like James Heinz, right? You might want all those tugboat photographs. I just came across them here in the museum again the other day. Here's a coal vessel again.
Okay, see that.
That's 109. Here's a neat one with the bottom of 109 with a passenger liner, and you see right above there, it looks like it's floating our city hall steeple.
Yeah. The Noronic burned, and in 1949 it says. I remember reading about that.
Burned at our dock in Toronto, it says.
Yes. There's one at the interesting one at the bottom of 110, a schooner. And it says this took place in 1952, so I don't know what that is. That was a sail training vessel or what?
Yeah, the schooner yacht Atlantic is moored at the Schlitz Brewery Company dock. That kind of neat. Wow, so here is 111 then at the bottom. They have the lumber yard, but they talk about when vessels can no longer travel up the river. And it created supply problems for businesses such as the lumber yard here. I mean, just imagine things like that. This is not going too far up the river here, the Milwaukee Western Fuel Company.
No. Above the Holton
That's at Holton, yeah, Holton Street Viaduct there.
Street Viaduct. Well, no, that's some distance up the river. That's some distance further.
Yeah.
Up the river. That's north of Holton Street. So the caption says that the vessels can no longer do that. I suppose when the business is closed.
So at the bottom of that page, sorry we lost you again, James. This is looking south at the Michigan Street Bridge in 1964.
Mm-hmm.
And you have those the little, what would we call those? The little houses there?
The bridge house. Bridge,
yeah, the bridge house. Yeah. Those are sometimes open during Street Civil or during
Open Doors Milwaukee.
Open Doors Milwaukee. Yeah, there we go. Very, very popular to get into those because you never really get the chance.
No.
See them from outside all the time if you walk across the bridges. Here is another thing that's been discontinued, the dumping of the snow into the harbor. Obviously, you're going to get a lot of pollutions and salt, other great debris when you do that type of thing, how dirty the snow is. See in the bottom on 114, we've got the another excursion vessel on a whaleback this time. It's the Iroquois. Very narrow, kind of thin looking ship. But that allows you to see, everybody that's on the boat has a window. One more shot of that cement carrier, the Ford there. This one is data photograph, May 1981. So that brings us, let's see if James comes back to chapter 6, the Port of Milwaukee today.
Okay.
So that's our last chapter. Just a few more pictures left in here. So nearly every year, the volume of goods passing through the Port of Milwaukee has increased. So what looks like less vessel traffic is more than made up for by the increased size of the ships themselves. And then you get right away the schooner there, the Dennis Sullivan that we have. I've never been on it.
Yep,
I don't know. Is there anybody else been on that?
It's not sailing this year because they can't find a
century
captain.
Replica.
Yep.
The Hoen Bridge, also built over the harbor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So named for Mayor Daniel Hoen, who never got to see it completed.
No, he did not.
Just kind of a vision that he had to connect our south and our downtown together, the Walker's Point and the old Juneau town that you had originally mentioned at the way beginning of this. I guess they're not fighting anymore if they're building such wonderful bridges like the Hoen. I love that it's lit up now. That is so neat.
Too. Yeah, these pictures are all taken by Chuck Sterba himself.
So these are in 2000, 2008. You see more of that salt. That was always something neat to see when we were little kids going over the Hoen Bridge and see the big, huge mountains of salt down there. So at the bottom of 123 is again mentions of the Wisconsin Milwaukee's Great Lakes Water Institute. And they have their research vessel. By the Allen Bradley Clock Tower. Where's my carriers? That's roughly the end of the book here, I guess. I mean, just more of the modern type of things that we recognize today. It says James is not connected. Here we go. We get James back one more time. Maybe you can sum up a little bit the ending here for us, James.
Well, yeah, I mean, the harbor has had an interesting history. It started out with very little and increased to quite a bit. And now it's not as busy or active as it used to be, but as the book says, it's actually shipping more cargo than it did before. So, which is, I guess, nice. I assume the city gets revenue for this. So, but you can trace much of the history of the Upper Great Lakes by this, the coming of the railroads, and then in essence, the going periods go away. So,
I mean, really, what we've seen with like the canal out there in Egypt, the Suez Canal,
yes.
That breakdown there, it really messed up the entire world's transportation.
Yes,
so much stuff still goes by water.
That's the problem with this whole globalization thing. I remember a few years ago there was a volcano in Iceland, and that shut down air travel over the North Atlantic for several weeks.
Yeah. Brittany says, my favorite thing to see driving over the Hoen are all of the lake freight ships. She's from landlocked Colorado. So she never got to see that type of thing there when she was growing up. So she likes all the activity seen in the port going on through there. But yeah, that's definitely something unique that we had. Like you said, our harbor was really originally much more important than Chicago's minor little harbor that they had down there.
Yes.
And now if you really want to see a massive bustling harbor, Duluth they've just continued to grow up there with all their shipping at the top of Lake Superior there, the tip. So, all right.
Well, thank you. This was an interesting experience, and it'll be a model for us if we do something like this again.
We
didn't have any trouble finding anything to talk about.
Does your organization have this book then for sale?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Website?
I'll have to check the website. I don't think so. I think Arcadia Publishing, you could buy it from them, but that is an excellent question.
Arcadia Publishing on the back there?
Yeah.
So $21.99. I'm sure you can find it more.
Oh yeah, I've seen it on bookshelf racks in the Milwaukee area as well.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Even as much as like in Walgreens.
Yeah. Yes.
It's very much
yes.
Yeah, unique thing that we have, and we definitely thank your organization for putting this together. I know it's a labor of love, really, to do something like this, to pull up all those old photographs, and probably a lot of countless hours lost.
Yes, well, Chuck was really an enthusiast, and he used to work down at the archive, so he could spend all the time going through the photographs.
Having a lot of fun. All right. So if there's any questions afterwards, you want to leave them on either of our Facebook pages. James or I will try to keep checking on those. I know a lot of people watch these after we put them. That's why we put them up there. Carl Eisenberg, the president of the Wisconsin Marine Historical Society, says he does have the book for sale. So there it is. There's the answer.
Oh, okay, good.
Question. Thank you, Carl. So maybe next time Carl will get in on the conversation with us and do these. I know he probably had a little something going on tonight. So, all right, James, anything else you'd like to say? As we
no, it's fun, and I look forward to doing it again sometime. You've given me a couple of story ideas, and maybe I'll be able to put those on our blog.
That'd be great. Yeah. And speaking of the blog, check in a couple of days for that interesting Titanic Milwaukee shipbuilding connection. I know I'm certainly want to read that as well. So,
well, good. Yes, I think you will enjoy it because some of the ships that this man owned are still shipwrecks that you can dive on today. And he would be buried again in Milwaukee, so you can visit his grave if you're a Titanic enthusiast.
There you go. All right. Thank you all tonight. All right. Have a good night.
Sure. Talk to you later then. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.